I mean, for me, it started off, it's kind of a personal thing, really. I mean, I live and work in Bath, and I rent in Bath. And about 3 years ago, about this time of year actually, because it was just before Christmas, so I thought it was quite apt that my landlord decided he was going to hike the rent up. And there was a real risk that myself and my family would be homeless for Christmas. We looked at housing in Bath and other rentable properties, and we found one that was on the market, and that was it. The remainder of the housing stock that was there for rent were student housing, shared housing, or flats. And with a small family, it just wasn't ideal. Thankfully, with a bit of negotiation and arm twisting, I managed to talk the landlord into increasing the rents only slightly. And it's kind of a stay of execution, really. And that's kind of where I sort of started looking at this topic, and what is it like to live in a city that is arguably one of the most expensive cities to live in the UK. This sort of led on, and certainly worked with my MA in photography. This led into this project where I was looking at the very nature of the city. Bath is famed for its architecture, and you can actually see the changes in architecture through the city over the past 100 years, and that really fascinated me. And also researching this whole idea of how do people afford to live here? What are the demographics? What are the salaries in the city? And that really sparked that interest. And 2 years on, lots of research and a book has come out.
Surely Bath is not alone in having this sort of issue.
Oh, it really isn't, and certainly the UK isn't alone. The rest of the UK really does suffer with the same levels of inequality. I think with Bath it's very polarised because you do have a lot of wealth in Bath. Generally not with the people that work in Bath, unfortunately, it seems. For instance, the average salary for somebody who lives and works in Bath is £30,000. Put that against the average rent, which is £2,000 a month. So we're already finding that people are spending around 60% of their income on rent or on their mortgage. And again, this is this inequality, whereas there are other parts of Bath which are particularly affluent, who may own more than one property, and can afford to pay the extortionate rents. And again, this goes back to kind of looking at where we started off about 100 years ago, and how things have progressively changed and worsened. And this really ties in with different policies that were made across the UK. But again, within the book I explore how that physically changes across the city, looking at social housing as kind of, trying to think of the best word to describe this, but it's kind of this indicator of where things change.
The buzzword is affordable housing with developers today, but we know all that means is 20% of the market value. Baines are starting to talk about building council houses. Do you think things will start to improve for the better? Are they becoming socially aware?
I hope so. There are certain councillors that that are willing to make those changes and those sacrifices. I mean, when you compare the majority of what's being built in Bath today, or has in recent years, these are luxury apartments that are being built, not family homes. And certainly the newest sort of ideas of the council for truly affordable rented property and purchased property, they're still only looking at single bedroom flats, and that's really to accommodate the bulk of the tourism really in Bath, the people that service the city, and those are low waged people working in shops, restaurants, etc. So it's really just to answer that question, really. It doesn't answer the greater question of what do families do. And unfortunately, what they find they have to do is move out of Bath, move into places like Peasden, St John, Bradstock. But again, that's just increasing the value of the properties there. So it's just pushing the issues further out. I mean, the sort of average house price in Bath is sitting around £450,000. It's nearly £500,000. To get a mortgage on that, a 10% mortgage, you're looking at over a year's salary for most people.
There are no legal rights when it comes to an affordable home then?
No. Through my research, I've discovered that the UK has probably the worst rights when it comes to housing, and that's not just renting, it's buying as well. Certainly within the rental market, it's easier to see the issues there. When if you have if you rent a property, you typically get a year or two's contract. Once that contract's ended, you can stay within the property, but the landlord has every right to put the rent up as much as they want. There are no safety nets, there's no legislation that protects the tenants in that situation. And that's how I found myself faced with that issue. And many face that problem. And certainly within Bath being, we've got two large universities, and there is a demand for student housing, and for a landlord it's a very attractive offer. For example, in Oldfield where I live, the average rent is around £1,200 for a 2-bedroomed terraced house. A landlord can convert that into anywhere up to 5 bedrooms and charge £550 per student. So already you're looking at doubling their money. In those terms, you kind of can't blame them. They buy the properties for investment, and this is where Bath is an investment city for them. And I think that's one of the crux of the issues, is that and this is a sort of central government issue, is that when you think about how housing benefit works, if the government increase housing benefit, it doesn't go to the people that are applying for the benefit, it goes to the landlords. So all the private landlords do is increase the rent. Similarly with when we look at things like the minimum wage, that's just gone up. Sod's law, at some point rent will go up as well. It's not fixing the problem. And this is kind of where I'm going at, is that what really needs to happen is what happens in other parts of Europe, is that the government control housing prices and housing rent. By doing so, you don't have to worry so much about constantly increasing wages. Another thing to look at is the percentage of increase in housing cost. So over the 20 odd years, housing has gone up in Bath by 700%, whereas we know that wages are typically 3% per year. So that's a huge increase and a huge disparity, and it's not something that's easily fixed.